The wine glass hit the floor before anyone in that ballroom understood what was happening. 175 people in silk gowns and pressed suits, and for one full second, the only sound in the whole room was crystal breaking against polished marble. It broke because my husband had just pushed back his chair at the worst table in the room, the one shoved against the kitchen doors, and stood up. He was walking toward the stage, slow and steady, while my mother stood up there under the lights, still holding the microphone. She had just used to tell every important person my father had ever known that at least as her disappointing daughter had managed to find a husband, even if nobody could say what he did for a living. I want to stop right here for a second, before you watch my whole family learn who they had been laughing at for 4 years. Because if you have ever sat quietly at a table while the people who were supposed to love you turned you into a punchline, then you already know exactly how my hands were shaking under that tablecloth. Stay with me. What that man was about to say changed everything. And the truth is, I did not fully understand who I had married until that night either. My name is Maeve Ashworth. I am 31 years old, and I teach second grade at a public elementary school on the north side of Minneapolis. 3 weeks ago, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Aldridge Hotel and watched my own mother make a joke about my life, and watched my father smile, and watched my sister smirk into her champagne, and then I watched the man they had spent 4 years dismissing as a nobody rise to his feet. And before I tell you what he did, I have to take you back to the beginning, because none of it makes sense unless you understand how I got to that table by the kitchen. It started 6 years ago, the night I met Adrian. I was 25, wrung out from a whole day of parent-teacher conferences, and I wanted coffee more than I wanted air. The little shop near my school was packed. There was exactly one open chair, across a small table from a man hammering away at a laptop like the keys had insulted him. I asked if the seat was taken. He looked up, dark eyes, a tired smile, and he said, "Please, sit." We barely spoke that first afternoon. He worked. I graded a stack of spelling tests. But when I stood up to leave, he said, "Same time tomorrow," like it was already decided. I came back. So did he. For 2 months, we shared that little table by the window. He told me he worked in education. I told him I taught 7-year-olds. He never once asked about my family, and he never once asked what my last name might be worth. I never asked about his money either, because he did not seem to have any, and I liked that. For the first time in my life, someone was looking at me and seeing only me, not my father's company, not my sister's long shadow, just Maeve. When Adrian finally asked me to dinner, I said yes before he finished the question. We dated for 2 years, simple dates, farmers markets on Saturday mornings, movie nights on his sagging couch. He cooked for me in a small apartment with mismatched plates, and I fell in love with the way he listened, really listened. When I told him about a student who finally cracked a hard word, he leaned in like I was describing a miracle. When he proposed, I waited 3 whole weeks before I told my parents. I already knew what they would say. He works in education. My mother repeated it back to me like I had told her he collected garbage. What does that even mean? It means he helps children learn, I said. So he is a teacher like you. She sighed the kind of sigh that could wilt a plant. Maeve, I had hopes for you. Adrian never pushed me to explain more about what he did. Once, early on, I asked him why he was so quiet about his work around, say, family. He took my hand and said, "I do not want them to like me for what I have. I want them to like me for who I am." I did not really understand what that meant back then, but I had learned very young that in my family a person's worth was measured in dollars, so I had stopped bringing the people I loved anywhere near that math. The warning signs were always there. I just did not want to see them. Every Thanksgiving, every birthday, every ordinary Sunday dinner, the same scene played on a loop. "Larissa, tell everyone about the Renner account," my mother would say, beaming at my younger sister. $3 million. Can you believe it? And my sister would flip her hair and launch into some story about closing the deal, and the whole table would lean toward her, like she had cured a disease. Then my mother would swing her attention to me, like a spotlight she resented turning on. "And Maeve, are you still teaching?" She said teaching the way most people say unemployed. Second grade now, I would answer. "I have this one student, Lucia, who could not read a single sentence 6 months ago, and last week she finished her very first chapter book on her own. That is nice, dear." And my mother would already be looking down at her phone. That was the small hurt, the daily one. The bigger one came last spring. My students had spent months putting on a play. They memorized their lines, they painted the sets, they made costumes out of cardboard and glitter and hope. I invited my parents. I said, "Dad, It is on the 12th at 3 o'clock, and I would really love for you to be there." My father checked his calendar right in front of me and said, "I have real meetings, Maeve. Maybe next time." He had visited my sister's downtown office 14 times that year. I know because I counted. The week before the play, my sister leaned over at Sunday brunch and said, quietly, so only I could hear, "You know Dad is disappointed, right? You had the exact same chances I did." I wanted to scream that we never had the same chances at all, that she had wanted the corner office, and I had only ever wanted to matter to the people at that table. Instead, I smiled and said nothing. Adrian was sitting right beside me. He heard every word. That night, he held me and said the thing he would say to me over and over across the years, the thing I did not truly believe until much later. The people who love you do not ask you to prove your worth. They already see it. I wanted to believe him, but all of those small humiliations, stacked up year after year, those were only the warm-up. The retirement party was where the whole thing finally exploded. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. An email, not even a real card. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the retirement of Conrad Ashworth after 38 years of excellence in real estate development." My sister, meanwhile, got a hand-lettered invitation delivered by courier. I only know because she posted a photo of it online. My mother called me that evening. "Maeve, I need to go over the seating with you." "All right," I said. "You and Adrian will be at table 16. I pulled up the venue map on my laptop while she talked. Table 16 was jammed into the back corner, right beside the kitchen doors. "Mom," I said, "that is the farthest table from the stage." "Well," she said, "we have important guests. The Renners are coming, the Ostergaards, people your father actually does business with." I swallowed the lump climbing up my throat and said, "Fine. And Maeve," she added, "wear something appropriate. There will be important people there. Try not to go on too much about your little school. These are people with real careers." Then she hung up before I could say a single word. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed staring at nothing. Adrian came in, took one look at my face, and said, "They put us by the kitchen, didn't they?" I nodded. He asked if I wanted him to come at all, and I hesitated because part of me wanted to protect him from them. But another part, a part I had been silencing for years, was so tired of walking into that room alone. "Yes," I whispered. "Please come." He sat down beside me and took my hand. "I have stayed quiet for 4 years because you asked me to," he said. "But if they hurt you again, I am not going to just sit there." His voice was calm. There was something underneath it, though, something steady and certain that I had never quite heard before. "Adrian," I said, "what exactly is it that you—" He looked at me for a long moment. "I think it is time," he said. "Time for what?" I did not ask. Maybe I was afraid of the answer. The night before the party, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the future, about the children, Adrian, and I talked about having someday, about what I would want to teach them. Would I teach them to sit still and smile while someone made them small? Would I teach them that their worth lived inside a job title or a bank balance? Absolutely not. So why on earth was I still teaching myself those exact lessons, night after night, dinner after dinner? I lay there in the dark and I did not have a good answer. I thought about the last family dinner. My sister had announced her promotion, Senior Vice President of Marketing at our father's firm, at 29. Everyone applauded. Someone poured champagne. Then she leaned toward me and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Maeve married down. At least I am with someone who has ambition." Adrian was sitting right there. His jaw tightened. He said nothing because I had begged him not to make a scene. Later that night, I found him standing at the window, staring out at the city lights, and I said I was sorry, and he turned to me and said, "Do not apologize for them. But Maeve, I need you to understand something. This is not sustainable." He was right, and the next morning, everything I had been avoiding landed in my lap. I opened my email and found a message my mother had forwarded to me by accident. She had meant to send it only to my sister 3 days earlier. It said, "Make sure Maeve is at the back table. We do not want her husband making small talk with the Renners." Who knows what he would say about his little education job? I read it 3 times. It hurt more each time. And somewhere in that third reading, something in me went very quiet and very clear. Silence was not peace. Silence was permission. It was permission for them to keep doing this, to me, to us, forever. Something had to change. And the retirement party, I decided, was going to be the turning point, one way or another. The grand ballroom of the Aldridge Hotel was everything my father loved. Excessive, expensive, engineered to impress. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, white tablecloths, a 10-piece orchestra playing soft jazz, 175 guests in gowns and tailored suits, all gathered to celebrate Conrad Ashworth and his 4 decades of so-called excellence. Adrian and I arrived at 7. He wore a simple navy suit. I wore a black dress I had bought on sale 3 years earlier. At the entrance, my mother stood greeting guests like royalty accepting her subjects. She was wearing sapphires. Actual sapphires. "Maeve," she said, air kissing the space beside my cheek. "You came." "Of course I came," I said. "It is Dad's retirement." Her eyes slid to Adrian. "And you brought him." "My husband," I said. "Yes." She forced a smile. "Table 16. In the back. We know." We made our way through the crowd, and I felt the glances, heard the little whispers. Conrad's older daughter, the teacher, married to nobody, in particular. Near the stage, I spotted my sister in a red designer gown and diamond earrings, standing beside our father like she was the actual guest of honor. She saw me and gave a tiny condescending wave. Table 16 was worse than I had feared. Not just near the kitchen, practically inside it. Every time a server pushed through the swinging doors, we had to pull our chairs in. As we sat down, a woman at the next table turned around. Sharp eyes, an expensive gray suit, and I recognized her at once. Isadora Quinn, one of my father's biggest potential investors. She looked at Adrian, frowned a little, and tilted her head. "Have we met?" she asked him. Adrian smiled politely. "I do not think so," but she kept staring. Then she pulled out her phone and began scrolling, and something flickered across her face. Surprise. The beginning of recognition. Before she could say anything, the lights dimmed and my father took the stage. But he was not the first one to reach our table. My sister got there first, holding a champagne flute like a weapon. "Maeve," she said, "you actually came." "Why would I not come?" I said, just surprised. "These events are not really your scene." Her eyes drifted to Adrian. "Nice suit. Off the rack." "It is simple," he said calmly. "Simple." "Right." She smiled. "Adrian, remind me, what is it you do again?" "I work in education," he said. "Education." She let the word dangle in the air. "Like tutoring, test, prep, something in that world. So basically the same as Maeve. Birds of a feather." She laughed at her own joke. "Well, at least you two have each other." I felt the heat climb into my chest. My hands trembled under the table. "Larissa," I said quietly, "do you not have somewhere else to be?" "Relax, sis," she said, sipping her champagne. "I am just making conversation. Dad is about to speak. Try not to look too bored." We hired photographers. Then she strolled off thoroughly pleased with herself. Under the table, Adrian took my hand. His grip was firm and steady. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. "Do you want to leave?" I looked at my father up on the stage, at my mother beaming in the front row, at my sister arranging herself for the perfect photo. "Not yet," I said. "I need to see this through." He nodded slowly and said, "She has no idea what she is mocking. That is the saddest part." I did not understand what he meant. "Not yet." The orchestra went silent. The room settled. My father tapped the microphone. "Welcome, everyone," he said. "Thank you all for being here tonight." 175 faces turned toward the stage, smiling, expectant, and I sat in the back by the kitchen, holding my husband's hand, telling myself that this time would be different. It was not. It was worse. My father had always been good at speeches. Confident, commanding, the kind of voice that makes a room lean in. 38 years, he began. 38 years of building something out of nothing. Polite laughter rolled through the crowd. "But I did not do it alone," he said, gesturing to the front table. "My wife, Cordelia, my rock." My mother pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes glistening right on cue. "And my daughter Larissa," he said, his voice swelling with pride. "My legacy at the firm. Senior vice president at 29. The future of Ashworth Development." My sister rose slightly from her chair to accept the applause like she had just won an award. Cameras flashed. "Larissa has exceeded every expectation," my father went on. "She has my drive, my instincts, and frankly my ruthlessness." More laughter, more applause. I sat there waiting, hoping. "Of course, family is more than business," he said. "I am blessed with 2 daughters." My heart actually lifted. Maybe this time. My father's eyes found me across the ballroom. He smiled. But it was the smile he saved for difficult clients, the one that never reached his eyes. "And Maeve, my eldest," he said. A pause. Far too long. "She is still figuring out what to do with her life." Scattered, uncomfortable laughter. "But we love her anyway," he added. Like it was the punchline to a joke everyone was in on. I felt the blood drain out of my face. 175 people were looking at me now. Some with pity, some amused, some just curious about the lesser daughter. Adrian's hand tightened around mine. When I glanced at him, his expression had gone to stone. My father had already moved on, talking about his plans for some charitable foundation. But he was not finished with me, not yet. While my father droned on, Isadora Quinn was still staring at my husband, not casually, intently, like she was working out a puzzle. She kept glancing at her phone, then back at Adrian, scrolling, zooming, comparing. Finally, she leaned across the gap between our tables. "Excuse me," she whispered. "I am so sorry, but I have to ask. Have we truly never met?" Adrian shook his head. "I do not believe so. You just look so familiar," she said, and she held up her phone toward him. "Is this—" My father's voice cut across the room. "Isadora, care to share with the class?" She snapped the phone down, startled. "Just checking email, Conrad. Please, go on." My father chuckled. "Always working. That is why I love you, Isadora." The moment passed, but I saw her glance back at Adrian 2 more times, and I saw the barely hidden shock on her face, her mouth opening slightly and then closing. She knew something, or she thought she did. "Adrian," I whispered. What was she looking at? "Nothing important," he said. She recognized me. He squeezed my hand. "Let it go, for now, for now." What did that mean? Up on the stage, my father was wrapping up. "But enough about business," he said. "Let us talk about what really matters, family." He held out a hand toward my mother. She rose gracefully and joined him under the lights. "Cordelia," he said, "would you like to say a few words?" My mother took the microphone with the ease of a woman who had been performing her whole life. "Thank you, darling." She scanned the crowd, and then her eyes locked onto me. I knew that look. It never ended well. And here I have to tell you about something strange Adrian had done 3 hours earlier, while we were getting dressed. He had reached into his briefcase and pulled out a plain white envelope. Thick, official looking. He slid it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. "What is that?" I asked. "Insurance," he said. "Insurance for what?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and said, "For you, in case they go too far." I had not asked what was inside. Honestly, I had not wanted to know. Part of me had hoped we would never need it. But sitting there watching my mother lift the microphone with that particular smile, I thought about that envelope, and I wondered what my husband thought was about to happen. "I want to say a few words about family," my mother announced. "About the people who make everything worthwhile." Her gaze swept the room, landing warmly on my sister, politely on the guests, and on me with something that looked a lot like contempt. "Conrad and I have been so blessed," she said. "Our youngest, Larissa, has made us endlessly proud, following right in her father's footsteps, building an empire of her own." My sister raised her glass. Cameras flashed again, and then my mother said, "There is Maeve." My stomach clenched. "Our eldest took a different path," she said, her smile turning surgical. "She teaches elementary school, 2nd grade, I believe. Or is it 1st now?" "2nd," I said, though no one could hear me from table 16. "But you know what," she went on. "At least she found a husband." She paused for effect. Even if none of us can quite say what he does for a living, the room erupted in laughter, and something inside me broke. Not my heart, my patience. Beside me, Adrian slowly reached into his jacket. The laughter rolled through the ballroom like a wave, and some people hid it behind their hands, and some did not bother. My father took the microphone back from my mother, still chuckling. Now, Cordelia, be nice," he said. But he was smiling, enjoying every second of it. "Maeve has her own little talents," he added, saying talents the way you might say quirks about a difficult child. "Some people are meant to lead," he continued, gesturing grandly across the room. "Others are meant to support. Maeve has always been a supporter." I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. This was not a speech anymore. It was a public execution. "We tried to guide her, of course," he said. "We offered her a position at the firm. We offered to pay for her graduate degree. But Maeve chose, well, whatever it is she chose." Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Poor Conrad. Such a disappointing daughter." "But that is family," he said, raising his glass. "You love them anyway, even when they do not meet expectations. To family, complicated as they may be." 175 glasses rose in answer. To family. And there I sat, at the table by the kitchen, while an entire ballroom toasted to my failure. That was when I realized Adrian's hand was no longer holding mine. I looked over. His chair was empty. He was already on his feet. "Adrian," I whispered. "What are you doing?" He did not answer. He just started walking, calm and measured, every step deliberate, straight toward the stage. Heads began to turn. Whispers spread through the room. "Who is that? What is he doing?" My father noticed, and his smile faltered. "Can I help you?" he said into the microphone. Adrian stepped up onto the stage. He looked out at the sea of faces, all of them strangers to him, investors and partners, and old friends. Then he leaned toward the microphone and said, "May I have a moment?" The rooms went silent. My father's confusion hardened into annoyance. "I am sorry, he said. "Who exactly are you?" "I am Adrian, Maeve's husband," he said. "The one you have never bothered to learn anything about." A few nervous laughs. My mother stepped forward, reaching for the microphone. "This really is not the time." "I think it is exactly the time," Adrian said. His voice was quiet, but it carried into every corner of that ballroom, every word crisp, every syllable under control. My father forced a smile for his guests. "Adrian, is it?" he said. "Why do we not discuss this later, in private?" "No," Adrian said. The word landed like a stone dropped into a still pond. "For 4 years," he continued, "I have sat at the back of your holiday dinners. I have listened to your wife mock the work I do. I have watched you treat your daughter like she is somehow less than everyone else in the room. And I have stayed quiet the entire time, because Maeve asked me to." He looked across the ballroom at me. His eyes were soft and sad. "But I am not going to stay quiet anymore." My mother laughed, a brittle, uncomfortable sound. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Conrad, call security." "No need," Adrian said, holding up one hand. "I am not here to make a scene. I am here to introduce myself properly, since your family never once gave me the chance." My sister pushed through the crowd, champagne sloshing over the rim of her glass. "This is insane," she said. "Who does this man think he is?" "Excellent question," Adrian said. "Thank you for asking it." And he reached into his jacket pocket. My heart stopped, the envelope. But he did not pull it out, not yet. Instead, he straightened his tie and faced the audience. "My name is Adrian Voss," he said. Isadora Quinn made a sound, a sharp gasp. Her hand flew to her mouth. "And I believe," Adrian said calmly, "that some of you may have heard of the company I built." The whole room seemed to hold its breath. Even my father looked uncertain now. "What company?" he asked. Adrian just looked at him. Before he could answer, my sister lunged forward and grabbed the microphone. "Okay, that is enough of this," she said, planting herself between Adrian and the audience. "Maeve, come and get your husband. He is embarrassing himself." "I am not finished," Adrian said. "Yes, you are," my sister said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Look, I get it. You feel defensive because we pointed out the obvious, but let us be real here." She turned to the crowd, playing to them now. "Maeve married a man who probably makes less than my assistant, and that is fine. Really, not everyone can aim high." Someone actually laughed, a loud braying laugh from the back. "Maybe he is a tutor," she said. "Maybe he grades papers. Whatever working in education is supposed to mean." She made air quotes with her fingers. "The point is, this is Dad's night, not yours. So please, sit back down, go back to your little corner, and let the adults finish celebrating." She thrust the microphone at him, expecting him to take it and shrink away. He did not. He took the microphone and he smiled. Not a smug smile, not a cruel one. Just calm. "You are right," he said. "This is not my night. But it became my night the moment your family publicly humiliated my wife in front of 175 people." My sister rolled her eyes. "Oh my goodness, so dramatic." "I do work in education," Adrian went on, ignoring her completely. "You are right about that, but I do not grade papers, and I do not tutor." He paused, letting the silence stretch and build. "I build learning platforms. Technology that helps millions of children learn to read." Isadora Quinn was nodding now, her face pale. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew I recognized him." My sister's smirk flickered. "What are you talking about?" she said. "My company," Adrian said, "is called Lumina Learning." Someone in the crowd gasped, and everything changed. "Now, I need you to sit with me in that moment for just a second, because I have carried it a long time, and I want you to feel it the way I did. If you have ever watched the people who counted you out realize, all at once, exactly how wrong they were, then you know there is no feeling quite like it. Stay with me, because what my family did after this is the part I still think about." The name Lumina Learning moved through that ballroom like a current of electricity. I watched it happen in real time. First confusion, then recognition, then shock. A man at the third table pulled out his phone, typed something fast, and showed it to his wife, whose eyes went wide. A woman near the stage put a hand over her heart. Isadora Quinn was already on her feet. "Conrad," she said loudly, "do you have any idea who this is?" My father looked genuinely lost. What?" "Lumina Learning," Isadora repeated. "The education technology company. They were valued at $250 million. They were on the cover of a national business magazine 3 months ago. The murmurs swelled. 250 million, magazine cover." My sister's face had traveled from smug to confused to something close to horror. "That is not possible," she said. "I assure you," Adrian said calmly. "It is very possible." My mother clutched my father's arm. "Conrad, did you know about this?" "Of course I did not know," he snapped, his composure cracking down the middle. "Maeve never told us." "You never asked," Adrian said, and his voice cut clean across the room. "In 4 years, not once did any of you ask me a single real question. About my work, about my life, about anything at all." He stepped forward, and the spotlight followed him. "You decided I was nobody because I did not brag, because I did not drop names or flash money, because I sat quietly at your dinners and did not try to perform for you." The room was completely silent now. No one moved. Last year, he said, a national magazine named me one of their 30 leaders under 30 in education. I have been interviewed on television. I have sat across the table from senators. He looked directly at my sister. I do not make less than your assistant. But here is the thing. If I did, that still would not make it okay, what you said about my wife. Isadora Quinn pushed her way to the front of the crowd. I have been trying to get a meeting with your company for 6 months, she said. Adrian nodded. I know, my assistant has your requests. Then she turned to my father, accusation sharpening her voice. Conrad, you have been telling everyone you want to move into education technology. The opportunity was sitting at your own daughter's table this entire time. My father's face was a mask of barely contained panic. I did not. You never bothered to find out, Adrian said. And then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope. But that is not why I came up here, he said. He opened it and slid out a document. Thick. Official. This is a copy of a signed grant agreement, he said. $6 million to fund reading and science programs in underserved schools across Minnesota. The money is administered through an independent education foundation, so it goes exactly where it is meant to go, and it cannot be touched by anyone in this room. $6 million. The number rolled through the crowd like thunder. And the very first school on the list, Adrian said, looking at me now, his eyes shining, is Hawthorne Elementary. Maeve School. I felt the tears start to slide down my face, not because of the money, not because of the number, but because for the first time in my entire life, someone was standing in front of my whole family and saying, out loud, that I mattered. Your daughter, Adrian continued, teaches children who have almost nothing. She shows up every single day for kids the rest of the world has forgotten. She buys supplies with her own money. She stays late to help a 7-year-old sound out her first chapter book. She changes lives. His voice cracked, just slightly. And you call her a disappointment. You call her a supporter, like it is a smaller thing to be. He shook his head. Maeve is the entire reason I built my company. Because I saw what teachers like her do, and I wanted to put real tools in their hands. He looked at my parents, my father gone gray, my mother clutching at the sapphires around her neck. I work in education, he said. I just happen to own the company. He held the document up so the whole room could see the logo at the top, his signature at the bottom, and the name of my little school highlighted in yellow. This is not charity, he said. This is an investment. Because what Maeve does matters. What every teacher does matters. Then he stepped away from the microphone and walked toward me, and the crowd parted to let him through. I stood up. My legs were shaking so hard I did not know if I could stay upright. When he reached me, he took both of my hands. I am sorry I did not do this sooner, he said quietly. I kept hoping they would see you on their own, the real you, the way I see you, Adrian, I said, and I could not find any other words. I have never been prouder to be your husband, he said. Behind us, I heard my mother's voice, trembling now. Maeve, honey, why did you never tell us? And there it was. The question that held everything wrong with my family folded up inside it. I turned to face her. My father stood frozen at her side. My sister had backed away from the stage entirely, trying to melt into the crowd. Would it have mattered? I asked. Of course it would have, my mother said. Really, I said, and I felt something inside me go hard and clear. Not anger, clarity. You have been dismissing me for 31 years. You have made me feel worthless at every possible opportunity. You just called my husband a nobody in front of everyone you know. I swept my hand across the room. If Adrian were actually broke, if he really were a tutor scraping by, would that make what you did tonight okay? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. That is what I thought, I said. Adrian squeezed my hand, supporting me, but he did not speak for me. This was my moment, my voice. And for once I knew exactly what I wanted to say. My father stepped forward, his business instincts overriding his shock. Adrian, I had no idea. We really should talk. Perhaps a partnership. No, Adrian said. The word hung there. Simple, final. But this is exactly the kind of opportunity, my father started. The opportunity was 4 years ago, Adrian said, his voice calm but immovable. When you could have treated your own daughter with respect. When you could have asked me one real question instead of deciding I was beneath you. My father sputtered. We did not decide. You seated us by the kitchen, Adrian said. You forwarded an email telling your other daughter to keep us away from your important guests. My mother went pale. She had forgotten about that. How did you? She began. Maeve showed me the one you sent to her by accident, I said. I watched my parents exchange a look. For the first time in my life, they had no spin, no clever excuse. Just the raw truth of what they had done, sitting there in the open. We can start over, my mother said, almost desperate now. Family is family. Is it? I said, stepping forward. Because you have spent my whole life making me feel like I am barely part of this family at all, like I am an embarrassment, a charity case you were stuck with. Maeve, that is not, she started. You said you did not know what my husband does for a living, I said. But the truth is, you never asked. Not once. Not about him. Not about me. Not about the life we have been building together. My sister tried to jump in from somewhere in the crowd. This is so unfair, she said. How are we supposed to know? You were not supposed to know, Adrian said. You were supposed to be decent. That should not require a magazine cover. The crowd stood motionless, watching, witnessing all of it. My father looked around at his guests, his partners, his whole legacy, every one of them staring at him. Perhaps, he said tightly, we should continue this privately. No, I said. I am done doing things privately, and I walked toward the stage. Adrian walked with me, his hand resting on the small of my back, supporting, not leading. When I reached the microphone, I looked out at the crowd, at all the people I had been taught my whole life to impress and perform for, and never ever disappoint. And I realized I was completely done performing. I am Maeve Ashworth, I said, the disappointing daughter. A nervous ripple of laughter. For 31 years I have tried to earn my parents' approval, I said. I chose a career I love, and they called it a waste. I married a man I love, and they called him a nobody. I showed up to every holiday, every birthday, every event, and they sat me by the kitchen. My voice was steady, stronger than I had expected it to be. Tonight you all found out that my husband is successful by your definition of the word. Wealthy, well-known, influential. I looked at my parents. But here is the thing. That should not change anything. The way you treated me was wrong, long before you knew a single thing about Adrian's company. And the fact that you are only interested in me now that there is money and there are connections attached, proves exactly what I have always suspected. My mother had tears in her eyes, real ones, performed ones. I honestly could not tell anymore. Maeve, please, she said. I am not finished, I said, and she went quiet. I have a job that matters, I said. I have a husband who loves me. I have a life I built with my own 2 hands. Without your approval, I took a breath. And from this point on, respect is the minimum. Not optional, not conditional on who my husband turns out to be. Just basic respect. I looked at my sister, then my mother, then my father. If you can give me that, we can try again. And if you cannot, I said, taking Adrian's hand, then this is goodbye. We turned and we walked out. 175 people watched us go. We did not speak until we were in the car. Adrian drove. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city lights blur through my tears. Are you okay? He finally asked. I do not know, I said, wiping my face. I feel empty. Like I have been carrying something heavy for years and I just now set it down. That is not empty, he said. That is light. I laughed, a wet, broken sound. My phone had not stopped buzzing since we left the ballroom. I finally looked at it. 27 missed calls. 16 from my mother, 7 from my father, 4 from my sister. Voicemails were stacking up. I played my mother's first one. Honey, please come back, she said. This was all a misunderstanding. We need to talk. A misunderstanding. Like she had accidentally mispronounced my name. My father's message was shorter. Adrian seems like a wonderful man, he said. Let us have dinner. I have some ideas about. I deleted it before he could finish pitching whatever deal he had already started building in his head. My sister's text was the most honest of all of them. I read it out loud to Adrian. I cannot believe you hid this from us. That is so selfish. He shook his head slowly. Selfish, he said. She still thinks she is the victim. Of course she does, I said. I turned my phone off and let the silence settle around us. Do you regret it? I asked him. Staying quiet all those years. Sometimes, he said, reaching over to take my hand. But I did not do it for them. I did it for you, because you asked me to. I know, I said, and tonight I thought about it, all of it. My mother's face, my father's panic, my sister's horror. Tonight, I said, I finally said what I needed to say. Are you glad? He asked. I watched the dark road ahead. Not yet, I admitted, but I think I will be. The fallout started the very next morning. Isadora Quinn called Adrian at 8. I listened from the kitchen while I made coffee. I want to apologize for last night, she said. I had no idea Conrad's family would. Well, that was appalling. It was not your fault, Adrian said. Still, she said, I have been chasing a meeting with your company for 6 months. I kept going through Conrad, thinking he might have the connection. Turns out, the connection was sitting at his daughter's table the whole time. She laughed, but there was an edge to it. After she hung up, Adrian looked at me and said, Isadora was your father's biggest potential investor. Was, I said. She called him this morning and pulled out of his development project. I thought I would feel satisfied. I did not. But I did not feel guilty either. Over the next week, the story tore through the city's business community like a grass fire. Conrad Ashworth's family publicly humiliated the founder of a $250 million company at his own retirement party. Not just any founder either. The one who had been on the magazine cover, the one who had been on television. The optics were devastating. 2 deals my father had been cultivating for months fell apart. His partners cited concerns about judgment. Reputation, I learned, is its own kind of currency. My sister was quietly removed from the Renner account. Too much awkwardness, apparently. She blamed me, naturally, and sent me a long text about how I had destroyed everything. I did not respond. The most surprising call came from the public relations team at my father's firm. They wanted to know whether Adrian would consider a joint statement, something warm about healing family rifts and moving forward together. Adrian declined. There is nothing to spin, he told them. The truth is just the truth. 1 week after the party, my uncle Emmett called. Emmett was my father's older brother, the one who had walked away from the family firm 32 years ago to become a high school principal. The one my father used to call the family disappointment before I inherited the title. Maeve, he said, his voice warm and familiar. I heard about the retirement party. I am sure you did, I said. I have been telling Conrad he was wrong about you for years, he said. I felt something loosen in my chest. You have, I asked. Every holiday, he said. Every single time he made some little comment about your teaching job. He never listened. Your father only ever hears what he wants to hear. I thought about all those family dinners. The ones where Uncle Emmett sat quietly in the corner while my father held court. Why did you never say anything to me? I asked. Because I did not want to interfere, he said. And honestly, I was not sure you would believe me. He paused. But what Adrian did, standing up for you like that took courage. It did, I said. And what you did, Maeve, standing up for yourself at the end, that took even more. I started to cry then, not sad tears, something else. Release. I am proud of you, kid, he said. I always have been. I just wish I had said it more often. Thank you, I managed. And Maeve, he said. Family is not really about blood. It is about who shows up for you. His voice caught. Adrian showed up. And so did you. For yourself. After we hung up, Adrian found me on the couch, still crying. Good tears, he asked. Good tears, I said. He sat down beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. Not everyone in your family gave up on you, he said. I know, I said, leaning into him. I am finally starting to see that. 3 weeks later, I finally agreed to see my parents again. I chose a coffee shop. Neutral ground. Public enough that they would have to behave. They were already there when I arrived, and they looked older somehow. Smaller. My father was wearing a plain polo shirt instead of one of his suits. My mother's jewelry was conspicuously gone. I sat down across from them. Adrian had offered to come. I told him no. This was something I needed to do alone. Thank you for meeting us, my father said, his voice stiff and rehearsed. Thank you for respecting where I asked to meet, I said. An awkward pause. Maeve, my mother started. We want to start over. Starting over requires admitting what went wrong, I said. Another pause. They exchanged a glance. We were hard on you, my father admitted, because we wanted more for you. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You were hard on me because I did not fit your definition of success. There is a difference. My mother's eyes glistened. We only wanted you to have security, she said. A stable future. I have security, I said. I have stability. Just not the kind you respect. We do respect. Mom, I said, holding up my hand. You called my husband a nobody in front of 175 people. You seated us by the kitchen. You forwarded an email about keeping us away from your important guests. She had nothing to say to that. I am not looking for apologies, I said. Words are easy. I am looking for change. What kind of change? My father asked. Basic respect, I said. Real questions. Actual interest in my life, and not only when it happens to benefit you. I looked at both of them. I will give you a chance. But it is conditional. Respect comes first. Always. My mother nodded. My father cleared his throat and said, We can do that. We will see, I said. And I meant it as exactly what it was. A door left open a crack, not thrown wide. That night, Adrian and I sat out on our balcony. The city sparkled below us, a bottle of wine half empty between us. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought. Like I am finally starting over, I said. Not with them. With myself. He nodded. Any regrets? He asked. Only that I waited so long, I said. I leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his steadiness. You know what is strange, I said. All those years I thought I needed their approval to be happy. To feel like I mattered. And now I realize I always mattered. I just needed to believe it myself. Adrian kissed the top of my head. You changed thousands of children's lives, he said. You showed up every single day for kids nobody else showed up for. That matters. I know, I said, and for the first time I actually believed it. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. The sounds of the city drifted up to us. Distant traffic, somebody laughing on the street, a dog barking somewhere. What happens next? Adrian asked. I smiled. We keep building, I said. The school program. Our life, whatever comes. Together, he said. Always together, I said. I thought about my students. About Lucia, who could read now, whole chapter books, all on her own. About the reading and science programs that would reach children who had been overlooked exactly the way I had. About the life I had built with my own hands and my own heart. And I thought about my parents. Maybe they would change. Maybe they would not. But either way, I was done waiting for their permission to feel whole. The people who love you do not ask you to prove your worth. They already see it. Adrian had taught me that one quiet dinner at a time, and now I was finally teaching it to myself. Here is what I know now, after all of it. Your worth was never theirs to hand out, and it was never theirs to take back. It does not live in a job title, or a bank balance, or a seat near the stage. It was yours the whole time, even when you were sitting at the table by the kitchen, especially then. You do not have to wait for a room full of applause to believe it. And if you have ever sat quietly, while the people who were supposed to love you turned you into a punchline, I hope you hear me when I say this. You are allowed to stand up. You are allowed to walk out. You are allowed to set the terms. If this story reached something in you tonight, stay a while and hear a few more. Because you were never this disappointment. You were only ever surrounded by people who forgot how to look.